Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff from Core Connection. And yes, today's episode is released a full day earlier, and that is on purpose because today is World Suicide Prevention Day, which is every September 10th. And that is what our topic is going to be on today. So we're going to get into understanding and recognizing teen suicide. And before we do that, Selina has this week's parenting moment.
Yeah, I feel like my parenting moments are always me learning how to step back and let things happen and me not trying to control it. But another example presented itself this week to teach me. My 10-year-old son was asked to write his own part for a church program that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And he's in the oldest class in that organization for the younger kids. And so to me, it's kind of in my mind, I think, oh, this is a big deal. This is his last year. This is his moment to like really understand all the things he's learned all these years and be able to present it. And so in the program, sometimes they give you specific things to say. But like I said, he was asked to write his own part because they trusted that what he would share would be impactful. And so they asked for like a 1 to 2 minute talk. And he sat down and wrote it and handed me the paper, and it was like 4 sentences. Mind you, these words, that the sentences he did share were pretty personal and pretty powerful. They were beautiful. And so the message was great, but in my mind, it wasn't long enough when they asked for a 1 to 2 minute talk. And I felt a responsibility as I've been in charge of this program in years past too. And I know the logistics that go behind it. I felt a responsibility that he needed to maybe expand on his knowledge or share more of his experience and what he's learned. And so I'm just so smart. And I went to my husband, of course, for advice and his wisdom to draw on.
Oh boy.
I said, okay, here's a moment. What are we doing? And I expressed my concerns before I had him read it, and he read it and was like, nope, leave it alone. That's perfect. That's powerful. And so I did. I just sent it off to the leaders that were in charge, and they thought it was beautiful. And if it's beyond that to them and it bothers them that it's not long enough, I guess that's for them to communicate to me. But I think the lesson was learned that what was needed to be said was exactly what it needed to be. And that letting him be able to express himself in the way that he did, because I think that probably would have done more damage to him of questioning what he shared or how he shared it than him being able to have that confidence in what he shared.
I really appreciate that. And I think that is a very relatable parenting moment. And yeah, maybe your parenting moments have been like that. But again, they are so relatable because it is really tough for parents to step back and let their kids take control, let their young kids take the reins, because as we've said time and time again, we've been solving their problems for their entire lives and fixing things and making sure everything goes right. And that's been our job. And so being able to step back and take a back seat is a really big deal. Another thing that it makes me think of is you have to ask yourself too, or in these situations, I try to ask, next year, when this same thing rolls around, is it going to really make a difference? Or am I going to care about this a year from now? How about 6 months from now? How about 5 years from now, right? Whatever the timeline. And so really asking yourself, does this matter long term? I think that can be another really important question that we can ask ourselves as parents.
Well, let's be honest. It's only been a week and it already isn't an issue for me.
Perfect. There we go. See, it's been a week. And
I've moved on to the next worry. But
right.
With that being said, no, really to think, like you said, next year, will it matter? And if I step back, what matters more is that my son felt like what he contributed was exactly what needed to happen. And that came from him instead of an elaborate speech that his mom helped him to write. And I think that's going to be more impactful in a year.
Yep. And you didn't use ChatGPT, so
I learned from you, Liz.
you did. You totally did. So we are going to start our topic this week with a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is that our podcast is meant for entertainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals. And if you or a loved one, or particularly a child, are struggling in some way, then you need to seek appropriate professional help, whether it be 911, call to the pediatrician, 988, right? So you need to seek professional help if there is a genuine struggle going on. So this is a very important topic and one that I am extremely passionate about in just terms of mental health, because everybody has mental health. All of the humans have mental health, good or bad, you all have it. And so suicide prevention is a really big deal to me, because I think the reason why it matters so much to me is because people don't need to feel that hopeless. There are resources out there and there is help available, and every human being, every life matters. And I really genuinely believe that deeply, that human beings they matter and they are important. Every single one of them matters. The world is a better place for all of them. And so I really want people to understand that you are in intense pain, and I want to acknowledge that, but there is hope for you. So we're specifically going to talk about recognizing and understanding teen suicide. So risk factors, warning signs, and why parents need to pay attention. So let's start off with why it's critical to talk about suicide openly.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, suicide can often be a buzzword for teenagers in junior high school settings. They're hearing about it. They're already talking about it with their friends. Mm-hmm. It's publicized. You know, even I remember as a kid, famous people that had completed suicide, and you know, it's just a heavy topic of conversation. So it's already happening. When we talk about it openly, it helps our kids to feel more confident in sharing things with us when they are struggling. You know, if it's not a taboo topic at home and it's something that we talk about openly and we recognize the risks and the danger and the reality of it with our children, then they're more likely to share with us if they're having those kinds of thoughts, or if they have a friend that's having those kinds of thoughts, or whatever it might be.
And it also doesn't have to reach the point of suicide. It can be any type of emotional crisis that your child is having. And, you know, suicide is the worst case scenario for a mental health crisis. And so the idea is that we want to avoid getting to that point in the first place. And I also want to point out here that if you didn't avoid it, it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong as a parent. Like if your child has a suicide attempt, it's not because you failed in avoiding the crisis. It's because it can happen so quickly, or teens can also be really good at hiding things. But I love this idea of creating a safe space for kids to talk openly and comfortably about everything. And that can take some time and it can be really difficult to do. But if you show them, yeah, I can talk about suicide and not lose my cool or not get, super worked up about it, then that shows your kid, okay, I can handle hard things. I can handle your big emotions and I'm not going to freak out. Because I think one of the hardest things about suicidal ideation is talking about it can initially be the hardest first step. What do you guys think? Okay, let's take a quick break and we will be right back.
Welcome to The Balance of Gray. I am your podcast host, Steve.
What exactly is The Balance of Gray?
It seems to be a rising voice in Christian podcasting. The Balance of Gray. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or not.
It's called The Balance of Gray.
Balance of Gray.
And how do we have this peace in a world that's falling apart, distracted with tickled ears in a form of godliness, yet denying its power? Because we have the Holy Spirit. And folks, if you don't, Jesus says, behold, today is the day of salvation. Now is your time for redemption. Do not wait on this. I'm telling you, you'll have a peace that surpasses all understanding. Find The Balance of Gray on Apple, Spotify. We're on just about everything out there.
Ooh.
Yeah, like I know that suicide sounds like a big scary word and it makes people really uncomfortable. I know from my own personal experience that word always scared me, brought a lot of fear, and because I don't know and I don't understand, but I think it's valuable for all of us. I want to say if you have kids, but really all of us need to have that education and understand so that we can help anyone that, within our reach that struggles, that we can help them through these thoughts and feelings that they have.
And oftentimes, when you're experiencing suicidal ideation, I think one of the hardest parts is just talking to someone about that and expressing these really big, heavy emotions that you are experiencing. What are your guys' thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think that can be incredibly tough to be able to open up and say something about it. It's a scary thing for parents to hear from their kids. Like that's no parent wants to hear that. No parent wants to go through the heartache of an attempt or a completed suicide with one of their children. So it is terribly frightening. I guess I feel like as we learn to be more open and communicate with our children about some of these heavy topics, it makes talking with our kids about heavy topics more normal. Suicide isn't normal. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that talking about difficult things be a normal thing in our homes. And that might ease a little bit of the discomfort of actually saying the words to mom or dad that, hey, I'm feeling like I don't want to be here anymore, or whatever it is that they're experiencing. Having this open conversation just becomes so important for parents and for teens alike.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into some risk factors and also some positive factors. So common pressures that teens are facing today that can sometimes lead to deep depression or even thoughts of suicide or thoughts of harming yourself. And so I learned something about a week or two ago that self-harm does not always equate to suicide or suicidal ideation. And I think that's important to distinguish. It certainly can, but this was something that Jeremiah actually educated me on a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's important to know. And I also want to say self-harm is a big deal. You do need to take it seriously. You do need to seek professional help. But what the findings have showed is that self-harm does not always equate to suicidal ideation.
Yeah, that's accurate. And sometimes we tend to kind of lump those things together, but they don't belong together. Self-harm, I've heard it put a lot of different ways from individuals who struggle with that. But most often what I hear is that it's almost a release of pressure for them. And feeling that pain releases the pressure that is building up inside of them, that self-pain, and it allows them to move forward. Definitely still a struggle and a problem, but they're not the same thing, I think is what you're getting at. And I think it's important for us to really understand some of the risk factors today, like what teenagers have to experience when it comes to things like the academic pressures to perform, social media, and the pressure that comes from that. There's a lot of family conflict or maybe an identity crisis or identity issues, trauma and fear. Like there's just so many different things, bullying, and it seems to be getting bigger as the world gets to be a smaller place because technology advances. It makes these struggles for teens more in your face, I think, especially when they have access to social media and the pressure they get from peers. And, bullying has always been a major issue, but it's gotten to be a little bit bigger because it's really easy to be a keyboard bully now, right? On social media or through texting or whatever it might be. And so there's just so many pressures that are put on kids to perform or to live up to certain expectations or live a certain way. And when they don't, it just could feel like the end of the world to them. And sometimes they feel like they don't have a way out. And that's the scary part. And that's where we want to create these protective factors that we're going to talk about here in a moment.
Right. And, the solution is not to put no expectations on your teens either, right? So that's also not realistic. I mean, because the reality is teens need boundaries and they do need expectations. It's not at all unreasonable to expect your teen to, work hard in school or to study and to function within a family and to be able to overcome and do hard things. Those are good expectations for teens, but sometimes they don't always handle it well. And sometimes there's just existential circumstances going on that can negatively impact them, whether it be, family conflict, or any type of traumatic event, right? Like something big could happen at school. There could be a crisis that went on at school. All of these things can create a feeling of I'm not coping well. And so I think that's kind of what we want to get to is, okay, you're not coping well. Let's help develop some healthy coping mechanisms eventually, right? So if you're not coping well and it builds to a crisis or even to suicidal ideation, that's an eventual step. But we want our teens to be able to cope with just pressure and the real world because that's just life. And so some ways that we can help them cope are positive factors. So belonging, supportive relationships, open dialogues, right? So some of these things that we're kind of talking about. And I really feel like creating an area of belonging within your home can be really critical for helping teens and kids in general develop these healthy coping mechanisms. Because when the pressures of the outside world come barreling down on them, they can go home to a safe space where they know they are loved and accepted, regardless of their mistakes or their failures or what else is going on. It's about somebody, one single person in their life. So an adult, whether it be a parent, caregiver, guardian, whoever it is, just being a safe space for them to be accepted for who they are, faults and all.
Yeah, I think the sense of belonging is one of the primary protective factors for teenagers when it comes to reduction of suicidal ideation. Not just a safe space at home, but a belonging to the family. Mm-hmm. They belong there. They're an integral part of the family. They play an important role, and they feel that. And mom and dad talk about that. And mom and dad, or mom or dad, play a role in helping develop that and helping them understand how important they are to the family. A sense of belonging also can occur in sports teams, and that can also have the opposite effect. It can occur in sports teams. It can occur in other organizations and groups. Church is a really big one. A lot of churches have youth groups that do wonderful, wonderful things with children and create a sense of belonging. Having kids involved in clubs and activities, where we're at, 4-H is a big deal. And that can create a sense of belonging if a kid is involved in something like that. So creating that sense of belonging is definitely a space of protection for them. And it's a wonderful thing that we can do. And of course, you talked, Liz, a little bit about supportive relationships. And I think that's important. We tend to just live in our own little bubble, but we forget that there's other relationships that can be incredibly supportive out there. Moms and dads, super critical, yeah. But what about older siblings? What about aunts and uncles that we can trust? What about grandparents or people from a church organization? All of these people have these supportive relationships. Also lends right back to that sense of belonging and that they're important and that they would be missed if they were gone. I think that, one of the things that I've heard often from folks is that, well, I just don't think anybody would even notice if I were gone. Well, if they don't have any relationships with other people, then, it's hard to combat those thoughts, right? So having and creating those supportive relationships becomes really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And also recognizing that supportive relationships can, some of these clubs or these activities, what have you, whatever it is, those can sometimes disappear. They can go away, right? Especially if it's a sports team, you can get cut from a sports team. And so I think that's why, again, that familial or that, primary caregiver role of belonging in your family, whatever it looks like. And hey, I'm an important piece to this puzzle that is our family. I'm a very important cog in our machine, right? My piece matters is going to help combat when, maybe some of those different or various groups might dissipate or something can happen, right? Because friends are going to come and go, sports come and go, right? And family is that one constant. And that's not to mitigate what Jeremiah was saying about the importance of those extracurricular activities and those extra events, so having your kids involved in those, because yeah, they are great at creating a sense of belonging. And it also really helps build confidence in kids. And, it's great creative outlet. And I am personally a huge fan of anything that gets kids off of screens. Love anything that gets kids away from screens. So, right. So again, like, these are important things, but keep in mind how central your role as a parent or, primary caregiver of your teen is, and look for ways to help them feel like they are an important piece of the family dynamic. All right, so why do teens sometimes not ask for help, even if they want it? What's up with that?
I can think of a lot of reasons. Like, one would be they're worried about disappointing you or disappointing themselves. We've talked previously about them not feeling like you can handle what they have to share and how that will affect you.
Yeah, I think that list is huge. I mean, there could be any number of reasons why they don't talk about it or don't ask for help. They're afraid themselves. And I think if they're worried, like Selina said, that you're not going to be able to handle it, likely they're not going to share it with you. And truthfully, if a kid is going through something like this, if they'll share it with anybody, that's great. It doesn't have to be mom or dad or anyone in particular. It just, if they will share it and share what they're experiencing, then they can get the help. I think sometimes, and we're going to get into this here in just a moment, but I think sometimes their behaviors and their actions are a cry for help. They may not know how to say it. They may not know how to say, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm really struggling with this. I've been thinking about taking my own life." They're probably not going to say that to you. But what we're going to see is some signs, and we're going to pay attention to those and learn to ask the right questions and then get them the help that they need as quickly as possible.
I think as a parent or caregiver or someone that has influence or mentorship over teens, give yourself some grace in that you might be like asking all the right questions or being aware of things going on, and you still might have no idea.
You can do all the right things and it still can not be enough. So that actually leads into an important point that I think we should bring up, that if your kid does start to experience suicidal ideation or some sort of a mental health crisis, it's really easy to fall into, what did I do wrong as a parent? And, what do I need to do different? And it's totally normal to internalize things and make it about you, because you are responsible for your kid. But in this instance, it's not helpful because it's not about you, it's about them. And certainly asking your kid, what did I do to make you feel this way, is really the wrong, is actually kind of the wrong question to ask. Even asking yourself that question of, man, where did I go wrong? How did we get to this point? Isn't helpful. But what is helpful is, okay, what can we do going forward? And obviously your first question needs to be, what do we need to do right now in the immediate future? And so some of the warning signs that you need to look out for is hopelessness, extreme mood changes, withdrawal. So those are going to be emotional signs, behavioral signs, giving away possessions, risky behaviors, saying goodbye. And then, verbal clues can be direct or subtle, right? Of, oh, my life is so terrible, and, I wish I weren't here. I wish I'd never been born. Those are really important opportunities to say, are you considering ending your life? Are you, are you experiencing such emotional stress that you feel like there's no way out? And kind of prompting and asking those direct questions and doing so calmly, right? And because I think sometimes we want to jump straight to solution, but we have to, as we talked about last week, we have to spend time in the muck. We have to get down in the mud with our kid and just remind them, I am here for you, to support you, and I want to do whatever I can to help you get through this crisis.
Yeah, and so many times just being able to talk to somebody openly about what they're experiencing can be incredibly soothing and relieving for an individual. And I'm not suggesting that if they talk to you, you don't need to do anything. Still, we've got to take the necessary steps to protect. Calling 911, taking them to a hospital, whatever it is, we have to protect. But that could just alleviate so much. Just the opportunity to say, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling," and to have mom or dad or whoever it is wrap their arms around them and express their love for them and listen without judgment and without fear of retribution or anything of that nature, but to just listen and be with them in the moment can be very powerful for your child. And I was also going to mention that, Liz, you mentioned several signs, emotional, behavioral, and verbal cues of what we could be looking for. That is not an extensive list or an exhaustive list by any means. That's just a couple of things that we've come up with that could be going on. As a parent, you probably know your kid the best, and you're going to see changes and signs, and we want you to pay attention to that. You're going to have feelings and thoughts. Pay attention to that and ask the questions and take the steps necessary to help your children through whatever difficult circumstance they're experiencing.
It's not about being perfect. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be there and as calm as possible. And I'm not, when I say calm, I don't mean, oh, that's interesting. Okay, sure. Yeah. Right. That's not what I mean by calm. I mean, because you do need to say, I see that this is incredibly painful for you, and it is appropriate to, take it seriously and to act appropriately. Like, we're going to do this and to take immediate action. Right. But if you start freaking out, then they're going to get more freaked out, and it's just going to escalate, and it's going to make it harder for them to come to you in the future. And that's not to say that you're not going to be freaking out on the inside. And it's totally okay and normal to be freaking out and to even take space to freak out somewhere else, right? Like, when your kid is not around, you've got to process these emotions yourself too, and let yourself feel and let yourself freak out and say to someone, I just went through this terrible, awful thing with my kid and I'm freaking out about it. You need that. That's going to be an important step in helping you be able to cope with this as well. But, as much as possible, trying to just remain calm, but assertive. Does that sound right to you guys?
Yeah, I just want to add something to what you're saying, because I agree with what you're saying, Liz, that if we can be calm and collected and have a good presence of mind, that's wonderful. And you know what? If you freak out, it's okay too. You can figure it out. You can still get your kid the help that they need, and you can still get through it. Just because you freak out doesn't mean that you screwed it all up and that there's going to be a big problem. We're just talking about what the ideal situation would be should this type of topic need to be discussed in your home. And with teens, it's very likely that it's going to be discussed at some point and at some level, but you're not going to do it perfect. And so what if you did freak out? It's okay. Now let's just take the steps necessary to get the child the help that they need and get you the help that you need and work through it and move forward.
And it could also be a great opportunity to say, I don't always handle things right either. I have big emotions too. I get scared. It's a normal part of life. So resources, important resources that are out there. So immediate support is the 988 crisis line. So it's called the crisis and suicide line. If your teen is experiencing suicidal ideation, and if they are not in imminent danger, I think that's another important concept to stress. Like, if your child is in imminent danger of, I no longer want to live, I am ready to die by suicide, then you need to go to the emergency room. But if they're just saying, I feel hopeless and I feel heavy, I've been thinking about ending my life, and you can say, oh, okay, well, do you have a plan, right? Or if you probe, no, I don't have a plan, I'm just really struggling. 988 is a great resource and a great option just for that immediate support. But if you are concerned at all about their immediate safety, 911. Another resource, you can also always talk to their pediatrician. They can get you a referral to a therapist And, even reaching out to schools can be appropriate, especially if it's originating within the school. If maybe there's some issues of bullying going on, or, academic stress, academic pressure. Schools can also help provide resources to help a teen struggling.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Liz. I think schools can have some great resources. I also think that if you're not sure, just take them to the hospital. There's an emergency room close by most people in the world today. If there's not, call 911. You're going to get the help that you need. And even if it wasn't that serious, the hospitals have people on staff that are there all the time or come in to assess whether or not a situation is very dire, or if there's something else that can be done. There's behavioral health centers that are located in most urban areas and suburban areas. And there's just a lot of resources out there to get you the help that they need. And the hospitals are going to help you coordinate if we need to have a longer stay due to suicidal ideation where they're watched 24/7. The hospital will get that set up and make that happen. If we just need to get into therapy and counseling, the hospital will have resources for that, case managers that can help you get those kinds of things set up. So you're not alone. Churches sometimes have some resources there. There's just a lot of opportunities. So don't be afraid to ask for help as a parent to figure out what you need to do. And really, if you're even unsure a little bit, get to the hospital, take them to the hospital and get them the help that they need, and make sure that they understand they have the access to that crisis line, the 988 number. What a wonderful resource that our world has put together to help people who are struggling. Because that's not just for teens, it's for anyone. Anyone could utilize the 988 number. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for outside support from, friends, family, trusted adults, right? Maybe ask your teen, is there someone else that you can talk to about this? Is there someone that you feel comfortable opening up to about this, whether it be a friend or maybe another family member, right? Like a grandparent, basically any trusted member that you feel comfortable with, just being able to be there and just be an additional listening ear that can come talk to and help your kiddo out. But I think the biggest takeaway is do not do it alone. That is, I think, the number one thing is if there is suicidal ideation going on, do not try to handle it on your own. You have to get and seek professional help in some shape or form.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Liz. Look, this is a tough topic. We get it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to bring this up, and there's a lot of fear surrounding it. Yep, that's normal. And I also think it's normal for most people to have thoughts at different times of maybe life would be easier if I weren't here, or to have thoughts of not wanting to exist anymore when life is difficult. I think that's pretty normal. And how far those thoughts go, that should be determined with a therapist or a professional that can help you work through that to see if there's anything more serious going on. But as parents, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to communicate with your kids and to create a space where those conversations can happen. Work on building the relationship with your child. Selina and I talk about that often in all kinds of different scenarios, right? Is first connection. Build that connection, have that connection with your child. The greater the connection, the more probable it is that they will have hard conversations with you and be more open with you. And then you can walk through this tough stuff with them and be a partner with them.
Absolutely.
And realize that they already are thinking and talking about it. You're not going to be introducing or planting ideas into their mind if you have these conversations with them about suicide. They're already hearing and talking about it. So having them come to you to get the knowledge in a proper way would be best for them.
Yeah, because you bringing the subject up, that's not going to necessarily plant the idea in their head, because it's already most likely been planted there by someone else. So, like as Selina said, they're just going to get accurate and correct information from you. Okay, so next week, we are going to continue with this topic. So breaking the silence and building a safety net. And we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.